What's up, YouTube? It's the Action Figure Grader coming back to you with another video. And as I talked about in my Monday Vintage Kenner Market Update video, there were so many awesome items that sold this past weekend, and even up into today, that I wanted to break it up into mint on card items, which I did on Monday. And then today I wanted to talk about mainly loose graded figures, UKG and AFA graded figures mainly, and also mostly last 17 figures. And I think the key point I wanted to get across, as you saw in the thumbnail for this video, is that I think US buyers in general are at a significant competitive disadvantage when it comes to bidding on a lot of these auctions right now. And, whether it's items that are in the UK and based on British pounds, or if it's like items like Hakes, or some of those other international, like Vectis, things like that, that are international auction sites where it attracts a lot of international buyers. I think in general, and I don't think it's going to get better anytime soon, but because of the eroding value of the dollar, that I think we're going to see it be pretty tough for US bidders right now for a lot of these international items. And we've talked about it in the past, but I've mentioned kind of in past videos about the inflation rate in the US and how out of control it is. And here, here's a chart just to show you of what it's been doing over the last year. And you can see the annualized inflation rate since April, really, of this year. It has really accelerated, and it's gotten worse over the last few months with prices for commodities and everything else, gas. We've talked about all that in the past, but it's staying up there. And if you remember, I was laughing because the Federal Reserve was saying, well, it's just temporary. It's not going to last very long. And I was laughing in those videos saying, no, it's not. It's going to be here for a while. And they're finally admitting that. So, just 10 months ago, you can see where I highlighted here, just 10 months ago, the Fed was expecting inflation to average just 1.8% this year. And now it's looking more like 5.3%. And I can promise you that that number is probably low by about a third. It's probably more like 10 to 15% inflation is what we're estimating, even though the Fed still thinks we're going to be in that 3 to 4% range, which is complete insanity. We have way, way, way higher inflation than those numbers are showing. And between the labor shortfall, there's, we don't have enough people who are willing to work right now. And we have a lot of people quitting because of, a number of factors, which I'm sure you guys are aware of, that are pretty polarizing facts, and I won't get into it. But, everything's expensive because the logistics of getting items to the U.S. are expensive. It's just really tough right now. And I think we're starting to see that, and not that we haven't already. I mean, we've clearly seen prices accelerate for collectibles. But because of the eroding value of the US dollar and all this inflation we're experiencing, particularly against when you convert it to Great British pounds, the numbers are pretty staggering what a lot of these eBay UK auctions are going for. And not everything in here is from the UK, but I wanted to point out that fact is that, with US inflation accelerating to such massive numbers, the dollar is eroding against the pound. And so, as you can see here, for example, this last 17 R2-D2 pop-up lightsaber, this was a UKG 85, and it sold at auction. It sold for 920 pounds, or about $1,258 US. That's a pretty big number for a loose graded figure. And I would love to say that, if that item was in the US, that it would go for a smaller number than that. And maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. I don't know. But I would be curious to take that exact same item, exact same grade and grading company, and if that was listed in US dollars here on a US eBay, a US auction for eBay, whether that price would hold up, whether it would still be $1,258 or it would be something smaller than that. Who knows? I just think you'd be competing against a lot less UK buyers, and where the pound is a lot stronger for them, and they can get a lot more purchasing power. So. A few others, though. This is an example, though, of one that did sell in the U.S. This one just closed today. Now, it was a U85, and for whatever reason, a lot of collectors, high-end collectors, they love that uncirculated figure because they no longer grade that way anymore. But exact same figure, U85, and that one sold for $1,600. So maybe my theory is completely insane, and it wouldn't matter anyway, because this was a UKG 85, and then this was an AFA U85. and it sold for quite a pretty massive number. So so take everything I just said and throw it out the window, apparently. But now I got another interesting kind of data piece here. We had a couple of last 17 Luke Skywalker in a Stormtrooper disguise sell. One of them was a UKG 80, and then one of them was an 85, and they sold it pretty close back to each other. And I'll give you a second to think maybe what the price difference is, but this was a UKG 80 with subgrades of 80 and 85, and that one sold for $656 US, or 480 pounds. Now, what do you think the UKG 85 would sell for? So I'll give you a second here and let you decide how much of a premium people are going to pay for an 80 grade versus a UKG 85. So this one sold for 480 pounds, and then this one was a UKG 85, and it sold for almost double that, so 900 pounds. So that's $1,230 US. So the last 17 figures, whether it's in the UK or whether it's in the US, it just seemed to every time I think we're hitting a high water mark, somebody's paying $1,600 for an uncirculated 85 R2 pop-up saber in an old style case. So, but anyway, these two Luke Stormtrooper data points were really interesting. To go from a UKG 80 to an 85, you're paying almost about double. Here's another one that another UK seller had. This was a EV99. It was graded UKG 85%, and that one sold for $813 US, or 595 pounds. So again, a really nice high grade example there. And then here was an AFA U85 Plus, a Miniman, and so that was another uncirculated grade. I don't know what's up with all the uncirculated last 17 figures, but they continue to command big prices. Now, this was a buy it now situation, but I still think that price actually is pretty much in line with where this thing would sell even online, like on Facebook or at an auction. But that one sold for $547, or 400 pounds. Is that high? I don't know. It doesn't seem that high to me relative to where I see some of these go for loose on Facebook. And then we also had two yak faces. So this one was a UKG 85 yak face. That one sold for $697 US, or 510 pounds. That's about a 25% premium over what I paid for mine earlier this year. So that continues to go up. And then here was an AFA 85. So a UKG, and this is again goes back to the comparison I was talking about when we looked at AFA graded items versus Collector Archive Services graded items. Well, now we're going to do the same thing with a UKG graded item. It's the exact same item, exact same grade. One of them was UKG. That one sold for 510 pounds, and then about $697 US. And then for that exact same item in an AFA grade, that one sold for $810 plus shipping. So a little bit of a premium there. And I think that's probably about right too. I think that if this was a CAS graded yak face, for example, let's say it was a CAS 85, I do think that that there's potential there that the CAS 85 would go for about the same price as the UKG. And then you'd have a slight premium for the AFA grade example. Now, this one did have an older style case, as did this UKG item. So I don't know how that factors in, whether people give a slight premium. I would think that for a last 17 figure with an updated case, they'd probably pay even a little bit higher than that $810 number. But anyway, just another kind of interesting data point. So we saw two kind of cool comparisons, right? We saw a last 17 Luke Stormy in a UKG 80 versus 85, and then we had an AFA versus UKG 85 yak face. So a couple of really nice price point comparisons there for those. Now this is another one that I wanted to show you guys. So this was one I was watching. I was thinking about getting, but I decided not to. But this is a beautiful AFA 80 Plus cloud car palette, and it was listed for $135 with free shipping. And I was like, I really should buy that, but I didn't do it. It did end up selling very quickly after that, but here was the grade on that. Now, what do you think it would go to go from an 80 Plus cloud car palette, AFA graded, to a UKG 90? And so this was a UKG 90 that sold at auction this past weekend. Same seller that we've talked about in the past. I've got a few items of his today, but look at that. To go from a 80 Plus AFA for $135 to a UKG 90, it jumps all the way to $700 US plus shipping. So pretty immaculate. This is a pretty immaculate item, though. It looks amazing. That color on that Hong Kong cloud car palette was absolutely perfect. So I can see why I got the 90 grade. But wow, what a massive price premium. I mean, that's, you know, let's call that what, 4.5 to 5 times difference, if not more. Yeah, it's like 5 times, 500s. Yeah, it's about $500 or 500% markup to go from an 80 plus to a UKG 90 for that same figure. So just incredible. Here was another one that was interesting. This was a R2-D2 solid dome, dimple dome. They call these the dimple dome. It's got like a little dimple on the top of the dome there, as you can see there. It's always hard to tell on these photos because the chrome can catch the lighting differently. So it may look like chrome defects, but it might just be, you know, shadows and things like that. My gut says that this was an 80, since it was a UKG 85, that it was just kind of some shadows in play there, but pretty cool to see one of those dimple domes. And it sold for big money, $526 plus shipping, or 385 pounds. And his buddy, who was another auction, that I thought this price was actually pretty good. This one was a UKG 75 Lily Letty with the screw back. And so there's a couple of different variations you can find for the Lily Letty C3PO, and this one has a screw in the back of it. And that's 70, you know, it's a 75 grade, which, well, that's kind of low, but it's really not. I mean, it's, to find a high grade C3PO, especially the Lily Letty, which they're kind of known for having pretty poor paint and holding up over time. I mean, that's a beautiful figure. I'm sorry, that's a really nice example of a Letty C3PO made in Mexico. And it only sold for 192 pounds. I thought that was a great deal. I think this, again, goes back to that theory I was talking about, where if you have a lot of really amazing items, and we're going to cover a couple more here that were also at auction at the same time. But when you have all these awesome items all going, and then you have maybe something a little lower grade, or, you know, just didn't catch the eye of the bidders that day, oftentimes you can find a good deal. And I thought this was a great deal. Even when converted over to US dollars, it was only $263. I thought that was a steal of a deal for a UKG 75 Mexican 3PO. So congrats to that buyer. That same seller also had this one. This was the apple-headed Yoda with a rigid snake. Really nice example there. Had the kind of the different color to the skin, or the plastic for the hands and feet versus the head. And that one sold for $469. It was a UKG 90 grade. So another high watermark for some of those high grade off-the-wall factory variations of the Yoda. And then I alluded to this also in my video on Monday, where we talked about the Dave Prowse signed Palatoy Vader. He also had some loose graded ones that were various, you know, signature items and things like that. But this was a Boba Fett with displayed in front of a Palatoy card. It had a lot of sun fading, it looked like to me, on the card back, but it was a loose graded figure in front of the card back, and you can see here it's got a Hong Kong figure to match the card back there, and it was an 85 grade, so really nice high grade. That one sold for $423 US, or 310 pounds. I thought that was a pretty good deal, even though the card did have quite a bit of, it looked like sun fading to the ink there. And then here are the two autograph items I was talking about. This was an Alan Harris signed photo alongside a Hong Kong UKG 85 grade Bosk. Really cool. I like that a lot. That's a really cool item. That one sold for, it actually sold for less than this at auction. It sold for about 300 US at auction, and I guess the seller didn't pay, or excuse me, the buyer didn't pay, and so the seller relisted it for slightly higher, and it sold immediately. So just an interesting day. Unless they had two of them. It might have been two of them. I didn't double check the serial number on it, but I would assume it was the same item, and that the buyer in the auction didn't pay. So he relisted it 250 pounds or $341 US, and it sold immediately. And then the last one was this one, really cool Jawa. This was signed, autographed also. A Smooth Cape Jawa, UKG 85%. It was a no COO Smooth Cape Jawa, along with a signed, signed by the actor. So that's kind of cool. That one sold for $314 US, or 230 pounds. So a couple of really cool kind of custom items that you don't see every day. And but anyway, that was kind of the premise of the video, is to kind of mainly show you guys some stuff that's sold over in the UK, and just talk about how tough it is for maybe not these items, but maybe some of these last 17 figures that sold, that it's going to get tougher and tougher for US buyers for a lot of these international items to be competitive. Number one, because the shipping costs have gone up so much. I mean, if you look at the shipping costs for a lot of these, let's see if we can find one. That was in the U.S., but they didn't show it for a lot of these. But I can tell you that the shipping, here's an example. Right, so this was just a simple loose graded cloud car pallet, but to get it shipped over here, it's almost $70 now. So I mean, it used to be 40, and then it was 50, and then it was 60. Now it's almost $70 US just for the shipping for any of these loose graded items to go through the global shipping program through eBay. And it's getting cost prohibitive when you combine the shipping costs with the fact that the US dollar converted to Great British pounds. It's just really hard for US buyers to compete when you have all this inflation going on. And by the way, this inflation is not going away. It's going to be here to stay for a while. I mean, into next year is my guess. And with all of the money that the Fed is spending right now, and the cost for logistics and to get labor to actually get off the sidelines and start filling some of these jobs that are out there and available right now. We got over 10 million jobs that haven't been filled. It's just going to be really, really tough unless they start raising wages, which in turn is going to raise inflation even more. So anyway, if you like this kind of video, please consider subscribing if you're new, and to all my existing subscribers as well as my Patreon supporters, as always, I appreciate you watching and for the channel support. Thanks again, and I'll be back soon.